Hello, my name's James Gardner. I'm a past treasurer of a rural parish here in the diocese. And I want to share with you some of the journey that we went on from moving it from fundamentally a bookkeeping role into rather grandiosely, we might call a chief financial officer. And I think that's important because we want to make best use of our volunteers' time, which is often in short supply. We want to enable our PCC to make wise and informed decisions. Not only we're there to serve God's kingdom. So how can we do that in the best way possible by being as efficient and informed and wise as we can with our finances? So let me show you a little bit of what happened when I took over as the treasurer. I was handed a big box of paperwork going back many years, which included a couple of checkbooks. And I was told it was really my job to loiter at the back of church at the end of services and then ask either the vicar or one of the church wardens to countersign maybe half a dozen checks on the Sunday morning. Now, I think there was the thought that, two signatures on a check give some form of financial control, but actually asking somebody to sign that number of checks when they're busy doing something else is actually not really a great way of maintaining financial control. And it certainly wasn't an efficient use of anyone's time. Now, because getting checks signed off unauthorized is a slow process, I found that the petty cash was being used far more than it should have been. So whilst you might think petty cash was designed for buying tea bags and a pint of milk, actually it was being used to pay the organist on a fifth Sunday, visiting clergy, and anything else that needed to be paid quickly. And then often mid-month, I would be asked to provide an emergency resupply of the float. So that wasn't a really good use of anyone's time, and it wasn't good financial control. And then I would often get, well, it wasn't often, unfortunately, my incumbent wasn't a particularly good administrator. So every 3 or 4 months, I would get a big pile of receipts. Particular bugbear of mine is they would often be very long receipts with circles, annotations saying, I'm claiming for this, but I'm not claiming for that. And then the maths wasn't always adding up correctly. So it actually took quite a lot of time to sort through that. And pay that claim. So I had to be a little bit strict of trying to say, right, it has to be paid, has to be given within the month following the receipt. A predecessor of mine who was pretty good on spreadsheets handed me a spreadsheet which she maintained the books on. And I'm not exaggerating, I promise. It had 17 tabs on it with interlinked formulas. And I do remember feeling rather hard done by on a bank holiday Monday afternoon, struggling for several hours trying to get this sheet to balance so I could close the books for the month. And I just got so frustrated with that. I would suggest that at least move to Xero or QuickBooks or something like that now, which is really a low subscription, rather than struggling with complicated spreadsheets. And then the final element here on this slide is I was expected to provide a financial report for each month's PCC meeting. Now, anyone who's done one of these knows it takes a bit of time, a few hours to prepare. And then I found I was given 5, maybe 10 minutes to present it. And then I would ask any questions. And invariably, there was no questions, which was really quite demoralizing when you've gone to quite a large amount of time to pull this together. It also meant that people really didn't look like they were informed when we were making decisions of quite large sums of money. So what do we do to change that? Well, I think we need to be professionalizing. In a business or any other organization, you tend to have senior people doing senior roles and making important decisions. You try not to use them to be doing jobs that are time consuming, but don't require that level of experience or qualifications. So I would say nearly every parish probably should be hiring a bookkeeper. They're really not that expensive. It's their day job, that they're good at it. It also provides a second pair of eyes to give you some financial control. So if you don't feel like you're ready to hire a professional bookkeeper, as I mentioned, I would certainly go ahead and purchase one of these online software systems like Xero or QuickBooks. But certainly that took a huge amount of time away from me. And it meant when we were auditing the books at the end of the year, I had somebody who could then talk to the auditor and provide that reassurance that we were on top of everything. And that was very, very useful. And then I've got A4 forms, which might sound a bit strange, but I was finding, and I don't know what it is about churches, but we seem to work with chits. I was having bits of backs of envelope pushed through my door um, with claims on so many hours was taken up by this. I just think if it's going to be a form, just write a pro forma form, put it on an A4 piece of paper that fits onto a file. An example of that was for petty cash, a simple form that said the amount of money in the petty cash box at the beginning of the month, the any money that came in, any money that went out, and the reasons, and the balance at the end of the month, and then the verger could give that to me, and that could be filed and sent to the bookkeeper and checked off against the financial system. Much more efficient. And then, of course, it sounds strange now, but there was quite a lot of resistance to moving towards an online bank account. Some PCC members were quite rightly concerned that most online banking systems means that one person can authorize payments. I would certainly say that's mitigated to some extent by having a bookkeeper with access to it. And I think it's probably good practice to have somebody else on the PCC with access and competence to use that banking system. But I think the most important thing is that we have a financial controls policy. I found that PCCs often spend a lot of time talking about quite small things. And then they turn up to a meeting and are asked to sign off quite large sums of money. Found it very useful to put together a three-page document that said we make decisions in this way with finances. So if it's a small amount of money, less than £25, that's really not worth discussing. Any member of the PCC can go ahead and spend that and expense that with good reason, of course. And then when we make bigger decisions, we timetable those in so that people have time to understand the purpose and the reason for coming to that decision, rather than coming to a meeting and asked to make a decision. And things like maybe in a summer PCC we have only just quorate. Well, that probably isn't a good time to be making large financial decisions. So actually, you might want to have at least 3/4 of the members of the PCC present before you make a financial decision over a certain amount. And it just gives confidence to everybody that everything's being looked after well. And then I would say be creative. You might wonder why I've got this picture of somebody cutting the grass in the churchyard. Well, one of our biggest expenses was to pay a landscape gardener who was a member of our congregation to cut the churchyard grass and look after it on an annual basis, something he'd been looking after for many years and did a great job. But quite rightly, he got quite beady with us if we were slow to pay him, because the hours would vary based on season or weather. And by the time someone had told me his hours, we'd raised the check and sent it to him. It would be could be quite a long time. So sitting down with him, we were able to work out that actually he charged us around about £3,600 a year, and he had done for the last 2 or 3 years. The hours really over the year didn't change that much. So I agreed with him that we would pay him £300 a month on the first day of the month by standing order, and that we would keep track of the hours. And as we went through the years, if it varied very much from the anticipated £3,600 a year, then we would adjust it. In the 2 or 3 years that we ran this scheme, I don't think we ever had to adjust it. And I suspect we probably got more hours out of him because it was a system that worked very well for him. He had some income coming in during the winter months, which were lean for him, and he got paid on the first day of the month. So it also saved me an awful lot of time and meant I could budget for how much that was going to cost each year. So I would say be creative. Finance is a great thing to be creative with when you've got controls in place. Next thing I would like to talk to you about is how can you manage your PCC? As I've mentioned, providing monthly reports took a lot of my time. It was a bit demoralizing when I never got really any meaningful feedback. So we moved to quarterly reports. And I was able to spend a bit more time putting some insights into that. So rather than just giving people a long balance sheet, we're actually talk about and comparing it with prior years and budgeting for future expenditure, which I found much more useful and enabled us to have more control on our expenses. And then rather than just presenting a set of figures to PCC, it was about these figures are there for you to take this decision, whether it's a decision about building work, parish share, or anything, or tithing. That was the report was designed to help people to make that decision in an informed manner, and that actually worked very well, and it was efficient for everybody. I would just add one thing here, and I've used it: resist the use of restricted funds. So these are ring-fenced funds that are designed for building work or particular elements of the parish's work. I find them quite difficult to account for. We've got lots of little pots of money. Means money's being moved between pots, and it means you can't do something because you haven't got enough money in that pot. But they seem particularly popular. I actually worked for a church where we still were using the 1937 electrification fund, which I think has probably had its time. I wasn't terribly successful. These funds are really popular with PCC members, but I would say it's not an efficient way to be using financing, or actually a way of it. They were often used to control money. So, we want the fate to be going towards building work only, and we can't use that to pay the parish share. And I would just say that breaches the final point I've got here, which is we're using our finances. All our money comes from God. How can we use that to grow God's kingdom in our parish? So we're having pots of money to stop it being used for a particular purpose. I would say that goes against that principle. And then my final point is, why are we doing this role as a treasurer? We're doing it because we believe our purpose is to grow God's kingdom and share the good news of Jesus Christ with our parish. So if we've got that motivation, how can we help our PCC to make wise financial decisions so that they can concentrate on that mission and serve Christ in all that we do as a parish and a worshipping congregation? So I hope you found some of that useful. It may vary based on your circumstances, but I hope I've inspired you with some thoughts and ideas that you could use within your own parish. So thank you very much.